New Frontier. As you know, we're here to talk about AI, and one of the topics that's close to my heart is LLMs and large image models, and how we can improve those models and improve everyone's daily lives. Because there's a responsibility that comes along with building these tools and allowing individuals to have an equal share in building those data models is going to be important to, especially to some of the things that Eric was talking about and a lot of other guests tonight kind of spoke on. So I just want to, just a little bit about my background. I've worked on a lot of different projects over the last 20 years. We recently just pushed out 2 VR cafes here in St. Louis that are built by St. Louis high school students in minority areas of the city. So we've been really active in the area of STEM and STEAM and having young folks engage in the process of building AI models. And what I noticed in the process of building these models, we built a model for the state of California. We did a presentation through Microsoft where we were building worker comp identification tools where if you wanted to create a claim online, you could easily just upload pictures of your injury and identify whether it was an injured worker or not. We could quickly start a claim through an API at that point with claim participants. And as the students started to build these models, we started to understand the ethical need for diversity in the images and the data that were being uploaded. Because when we started testing these models, we noticed some claims were getting denied and some claims were getting flagged as needing more information. So there was an impact directly measurable to everybody's daily life, because you might wonder, why is mine being flagged? Why am I being checked at the airport? Why am I being this or that? That's when mathematics becomes destructive. And it's almost like a vehicle put on the road. Now we have no seatbelts, we don't have anything, right? But these vehicles are going to get you there or not, right? So individuals are impacted when we don't understand the ethical importance. And so today I just want to talk a little bit about how imperative it is that we look at some of these issues. So I'm just going to quickly talk about a recent issue that came up in the news. Detecting biases is important because recently there was a tool that was used to kind of figure out who would be best to pick for certain jobs. Looking at imagery, looking at questions that you might get asked. And there's a certain amount of gray area when it comes to these algorithms and the data scientists when they're deciding on the language and the answers that are being feedback into the model. And for example, some of these questions borderline on mental health questions. So when you start to look at the Health and Disability Act, some of those questions are illegal, but the model is using those questions behind the scenes to decide whether you're a mental case or not, and that stops individuals from getting to that next round interview, right? So we need to understand that there's unintended consequences, when these recruiting systems start to favor one thing over another. So identifying some of those biases. Some tools that we can use, like IBM has a tool that I like to use. It's called 360 Fairness. And it essentially kind of breaks down the model. It helps you mitigate some of those biases. Another case study that I plan to share a little bit more about is Gender Shades. It's a project that came out which evaluated facial recognition analysis and how certain biases are starting to impact people on a daily basis. So some of the strategies for mitigating biases. And let's talk about some of the positive impacts and challenges we face. Okay, some companies are implementing things that help us kind of diversify and ensure a varied perspective. Increasing transparency into the algorithm. Salesforce, for example, they have some data that gets released on a quarterly basis. Implementing regular audits into their data that they're using to train these tools. Some of the challenges we're going to face. Some of these strategies are going to take more time and resources. So that's always an issue when it comes to business. And bottom line, challenges identifying these biases, having embedded systems, that on top of the AI systems that are going to kind of come in, like AI 360, that'll help mitigate those biases before they start emerging in the model. Potential backlash, we're going to have resistance from different stakeholders, different parties, different lobbyist groups, marketing groups, those type of things. You're going to start to see pushback when those models start to be tampered with. So one interesting project Google started was Euphonia, which was basically a speech recognition tool that helped try to add speech impediments into their speech recognition algorithm to help improve. If you've ever used text-to-speech and you have a list or you have some kind of issue speaking, those are built-in biases that are causing you to be frustrated. Who knows how many car accidents people have had because they just couldn't get their text message right. Can that be put on Google? I don't know. But some things that are being done to kind of improve the system, like I said, Salesforce, they have an ethics board. Different companies are starting to add these improvements. Pinterest, for example, they have a recommendation system which tries to ensure more diverse content. So ethical developments and initiatives. Some recent, sorry for the cut off at the top there, some recent developments and initiatives in 2016, Drags and AI Workshop helped put together a workshop to look closely at some of these models and algorithms to find out if they were ensuring gender identity or were they actually using gender bias in their algorithms. Also, talking earlier about gender shades and some of those projects dealing with the doctor here, some of her work she published. So some of the positive aspects, ethical AI initiatives, prioritizing transparency, accountability, and fairness in AI systems, engaging in stakeholder, fostering diversity perspectives, leading to more inclusive and ethical AI solutions, right? So organizing, promoting ethics in AI development and contributing to the trust of users and society. So what does that mean? So that means how can we use our community and how can we use our groups like this to try to come up with businesses and tools and initiatives and workshops to help organize and promote more ethical use of AI. Whether you're at your job and you're going to decide on a tool, for your company, are you going to ask these type of questions in the meetings? Are you guys going to address these type of things ahead of time so we don't have to have a class action lawsuit, right? That everybody's going to have to pay for later once these models get kind of busted out, right? So, and if you've known, if you had a chance to say something in a meeting, speak up. So some of the challenges arise, balancing privacy concerns, dealing with the AI. So in order for us to deal with bias, we have to kind of dig into data, right? We have to dig into data. So some of those privacy concerns can kind of start bubbling up. Ethical concerns should be basically one of the highest priorities, but also healthcare concerns and privacy are also a really big priority. So stakeholder engagement requires time and more resources there, so that's also going to be some of the challenges dealing with implementing some of these initiatives. Talking about some of the establishments already in place, Google had a ethical board called ATeach, which was short-lived, but they put together some of the AI governance. I just recently put together a tool for the country of Oman, which is right next to Yemen, and help them work on their AI 2040 governance plan, which is a youth guru-powered plan, which focused on AI, robotics, and IoT. But it's a challenge when you're trying to bring in different AI governance with job training governance and public health and public safety. It's a challenge to get all these different bodies and stakeholders engaged. So another group that did some really good work was the Algorithmic Justice League, which they worked on the Gender Shades website. So future directions and resources. We got emerging research coming out exploring studies on AI, so we got to stay ahead of the trend there. Global standards, adopting recognized standards. So like the European Union was one of the first groups, and Europe was one of the first areas to adopt a global consensus on AI ethics and regulation. So they have a standard in place that we can use as a world to kind of start building off of. And then also collaborating with opportunities, so partners and industries shaping the future of ethics and AI, companies that are going to be dedicated to try to shine a light on these issues. Racial biases and facial recognition. So positive impact. So being able to kind of address these issues, gender shades, for example, the project highlighted disparities. So bringing a spotlight on these things by testing these algorithms publicly, improving whether they are biased or not, is going to be important. Raising awareness and the need for diversity, having talks like this, bringing this information out, calling for accountability and transparency on facial recognition algorithms. So in airports and in other situations like job participation or those type of HR algorithms, we need a little more transparency and accountability on some of these things. Negative impacts are going to be, obviously, there's going to be perpetual discrimination. That's going to be something we can, kind of bet on, right? So undermining credibility, people are going to feel companies are going to feel a certain amount of impact if these things start to come out, right? So highlighting potential harm, that those type of things can start to impact companies, but also highlighting the harm that it does for marginalizing communities. So bringing these things to bear can kind of cause negative impacts. People will start rioting, people will start getting upset. So those are some things we have to understand when we start addressing these issues. Inclusive speech recognition training. So benefits like Project Euphoria improves accuracy for people with speech and hearing issues, increasing accessibility and inclusion to technology for all folks. Instead of just dress for success, making sure we have tech for success. Individuals getting into the job markets, not having access to maybe laptops, maybe all they have is a phone, or they have accessibility issues, they can't type, and they're trying to use text messages, but it doesn't understand individuals with disability. So now you're marginalized and your impact on a daily basis because of this algorithm of math destruction, I like to say. Challenges that we're going to start to see. May require more resources to collect this data, potential raise of privacy concerns again, and then we're going to see slower development in these training models because we're going to have to double check everything. ATECA was a great example. Also, the European Union was a great example. Some of the positive aspects of creating these frameworks, providing guidance from high level, involving diverse experts, and then establishing industry standards for best practices. Some of the negative impacts is we're going to start to see conflicts among the council members arguing about what's important, what's not important, potential discontent and disagreement, delays decision making. So we're going to start to see stalemates on AI and models and these type of things, which could impact our overall economy. And not fully addressing these ethical concerns can start to have these emerging issues in our lives. Individuals can't get jobs, individuals get marginalized systemically. And it's even more systemic when you have a real system in place. It's not just a human system that's casting down. Now we have a type system that's coming from above. When you start to think about the 1800s, 1600s casting systems that have been abolished, now they're starting to emerge technically and mathematically. So we have to be really careful about these systems and how they start to creep back into our everyday lives. In conclusion, I want to conclude by reinforcing, the ethical considerations that AI kind of poses. So we need to really have a call to action and become advocates. I want you to go out to your organizations and your communities, and I want you to really keep these issues in the front of your mind. So I want to take a second to kind of take some questions and answer some questions about this topic and get some engagement from the audience. Any questions about AI ethics? Any questions about diversity or inclusion?
So I've been talking about this conversation. I'm not sure everybody's not looking for jobs, especially seasoned professionals. But something that I've noticed looking for jobs is that affirmative action, everyone race, all these things that identify you, but they're replaced with questions like sexual preference, like different questions that still characterizes you as a minority. So my idea is that, when I start filling out these applications, one day I put that up straight, the next day I put that up gay in the same company. I've been trying to figure out where does it be at the top? Would that characterize me as being mental or confused?
It could, exactly, and that goes into a healthcare question, right? So, and that's been banned by our EOE, right? So we're not supposed to ask the type of questions during your interview process. So when you start to find systems and just applications in general, there's a class action lawsuit right now going on with Lowe's and different grocery stores where they're using these type of questions during their interview process, but it's through an automated tool, and those tools are now being brought through a class action lawsuit because of the same thing you're talking about. That's a good question, a very good point. Any more questions about this topic? Yep.
Yeah, you said you've worked with like kids. What are they asking these questions? Like, how front of mind do you think it is on the upcoming generation thinking about these systems?
That's a good question. We met with about 100 high schools about a month ago at the Microsoft Center over on Duncan, and they brought a bunch of kids in. A bunch of workshops. We did different exercises on AI. We built some models. We did some VR stuff, and the question didn't really come up. But I know when my interns are in the office and we're building models, and we start to select pictures, it starts to come up. So in a comfortable sense, it doesn't come up, but when you're in a more private sense and people have a chance to kind of ask those questions, they feel more comfortable bringing those topics up, it comes up. It definitely comes up too when you start to think about efficacy and how effective the model needs to be, and you want to look at coming up with effective models. It's important that we bring it up at the educational level, even at like high school and middle school level, because they're going to start to learn how to build models. They need to have, first steps first is create a diverse data set, right? So if you're talking about education, then how are you skipping that step? Why is data so monoculture off the flip, right? So it's like, okay, you're a big company, yeah, maybe you're mainly European or Indian or Chinese or African, so that should have nothing to do with the scientific method. So if you're doing a regular experiment, you're going to take random samples, right? So why are you not doing that with data? So that's the puzzling part to me. So unless it's important to you to make sure that it comes out a certain way, that means you're inherently biased. It's a good question. Your question?
So most of these models, you have a model, and most of like the guardrails are the ones that actually are messing up, right? So I guess what's your stance on actual guardrails? Like, do you think that's a good thing? That when we have these guardrails, because a lot of the guardrails actually are messing up when it comes to accuracy, with historical figures. When you ask it, hey, what is a picture of a not
Yeah, what it boils down to is resources and the architecture of that query, right? So when you're talking about hallucinations in the model, during a prompting session, you're talking about tokens being maintained, and you're talking about a conversation being maintained, right? So at some point, that hallucination starts to creep in. You need an overarching agent that can address those hallucinations within the model and start to pull your model back to the original form. That really boils down to queries and tokens and costs. How much does it cost to keep this model or this prompting session on track? That's what it really boils down to resources.
But it's also it's been the guardrails that have been, doing errors.
Right. The more complex the topic and the conversation gets, then you can start to see the hallucination in the responses. And then you start to think about different models coming out, Gemini 4.0, LLM models like LangChain that can help with some of these issues. It really boils down to what model you're using and the company and the tool you're using, how they're being utilized. And those guardrails can be put into place, but again, it starts to take more resources, more design, more architecture, and then more experience over time. Good question.
Yeah, I'm Robert. I'm going to come to you. We have developed a roadmap for AI, and in fact, we are coming out with a certificate certification in AI in the fall. And we are making sure that we are setting these goals to make sure, saying that we're looking at it from a different perspective. And from the industry side, we are coming out with things for AI. Because now AI is the key term, it's the buzzword, everybody's talking about AI. So that is something to that I like to let you all know that it is something that now you get your certificate certification from the industry, while we have a lot of these companies, academia coming together to make sure we build our curriculum to make sure that it aligns to what the standards will be for AI.
Right. So, at Lambda, we work closely with the Department of Labor and closely with some of the folks here in St. Louis at the Department of Labor. One of the guys at Wade, we make sure we align our curriculum with CompTIA for that very reason. So the students that come out of the St. Louis public school system system, like Roosevelt and Sumner and Clyde Career Academy, or even from, you know, Jefferson County, that come to some of these training camps and these boot camps, that they're actually receiving CompTIA training or a training that's aligned with the Department of Labor standards. But one of the issues that we do need to address is, you know, having ethical design considerations in the training, right? And making sure those things are addressed at the educational level and part of the certificate track, you know, and then having those jobs as, you know, respectable positions that we can actually take students or even interns and start coordinating those roles. Well, I love that. Thank you. Any more questions? Another question in the back.
So I hear your programs at some schools. How many students or young professionals are in this group?
Yeah, we've been training folks since 2014. We're slowly growing. We do about 10 students every semester. So our first cohort was about 30 students through Slate, and then since then we do about that every quarter. So every 3 months we have another cycle of students that come through our system. We have a tool called LAMI. It's an AI-powered training tool. It's broken up into 6 sections: cloud development, cybersecurity, Cisco networking, and also help desk, Network Plus. And we have different AI tools built in there to help the students work through those steps. And you know, AI is a very important tool and allows students to kind of accelerate their learning. We like to unleash it, so we think about students as potential gurus and shovels that can be sharpened. So we work with the Department of Labor to kind of bridge those gaps, especially on the minority side and students that have maybe start to see less opportunity due to these algorithms and these issues in diversity and bias in these tools. So bringing these students kind of right in the middle of it is going to really help. Any more questions? All right, so just a couple additional resources I'd like to leave you guys with. The book that I really like is Weapons of Math Destruction. This lady here, she worked at Google. She's worked all over the world. She has a great perspective on how algorithms are impacting our decisions on society. Also, some websites I want you to check out is AI Now Institute. It kind of gives you a lot of ethical research resources. And then again, at alanda.com, if you want to take a look at some of our training, we offer some ethical AI training. Just get with me if you want more information. Thank you.